lifestyle. Sports cards and we live now. Jeremy Lee in the building and every guest that you ever needed. Sports cards after hours keep the hobby heated. Updates, hobby talk like you never seen it. Sports cards live and none could ever beat it. Sports cards is a lifestyle. Sports cards and we live now. Welcome to another episode of Sports Cards Live with your host, Jeremy Lee.
All right, here we go, everybody. Welcome to episode number 209 of Sports Cards Live. It is Saturday night, December the 23rd, 2023. My name is Jeremy Lee. I would like to thank everybody who tuned in last time for our episode with Mr. Eitan Shapiro, also known as the Sports Card Cartel. That was a fun episode. You can watch that on the YouTube channel. Next Saturday, our guest is former Leaf CEO Brian Gray. He joins the show once again, and we will look back on 2023 and the year ahead and hear about what's going on with him. Tomorrow night, special co-host Ryan Lewis subs in for Josh Madigan of the Hockey Cards Gong Show for our weekly PWCC Hockey Auction Watch Party. That is a special Christmas Eve episode. And Monday, there is no MC Mondays Live. We will resume MC Mondays Live on New Year's Day. I'd like to ask you to join close to 500,000 people who have downloaded the Center Stage app across both iOS and Android for quick comps and card management features. Their app is the fastest and most accurate at card shows or at home to help you price your cards, build, organize, share your collection with your friends, and find other collectors to follow using their social sharing features. Marketplace features are coming soon, so check out their Instagram account and join me in supporting the great team they have and the innovation they are undertaking. Also, use protection, practice safe swaps. Veriswap is an app and middleman service that lets you trade cards securely through the mail. Every transaction up to $1 million in value is fully insured by their guarantee. You can check them out on iOS and Android. Veriswap is now live in Canada and will be opening a Canadian hub soon. They're offering $50 in free trade credit to anybody who adds 10 cards to their account, 10 hockey cards to their account. There's a referral link in the video description. Join me and Veriswap founder Raymond Lee for our bi-weekly Tuesday night Veriswap Trade Desk on Instagram Live. Those are fun little 10-minute episodes we do on Instagram Live. I want to shout out hobbynewsdaily.com for your daily dose of hobby information, and also Leighton, Sheldon, and Just Collect. Leighton will be giving away 2 prizes tonight of $250 of eBay store credit for his Just Collect eBay store. You have to be here watching on YouTube in order to enter through the StreamYard giveaway tool. Also, you can now buy, sell, and trade. Well, buy and sell tag graded cards on ComC, and you can join Tag Grading's Discord server and Facebook group. Links to both are in the taggrading.com website. Tag's new Tag X $12 grading service is a game changer, and Pokemon and other rounded corner TCGs are now eligible for grading by Tag. All right, I want to thank all our partners, sponsors, and of course, you loyal viewers and listeners for your ongoing support. If you're not yet subscribed to the channel or the podcast, please take a moment and do so. And I would also like to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. And as always, your comments and your questions are in play tonight, so let's get to it. Tonight's guest started in the hobby in 1990 buying Upper Deck hockey, and he dabbled until he was sucked back into the hobby in 2005 when his friend brought him a box of Upper Deck Ice, and he discovered patch cards. He went all in on Upper Deck, the Cup, and Exquisite with an eye for Ovechkin, Crosby, and LeBron James cards. He slowed down a couple times, but was brought back in for specific rookie classes like 2013 Nathan McKinnon and 2015 Connor McDavid, and he has a strong passion for F1 cards and has come full circle with his collecting pursuits. His favorite players of all time are Gretzky, Crosby, Ovechkin, Kobe, Jordan, and Lewis Hamilton, and his favorite team is the Pittsburgh Penguins. He's originally from Hong Kong and currently hailing from Vancouver, British Columbia. Let's bring him out. Steve Ho, welcome to Sports Cards Live. Welcome back to Sports Cards Live, pal. How are you today?
Very good, thank you, Jeremy. Just nice to be back, and nice to see you and see your show grow as well.
Well, it is nice to have you back. You and I go way back. Like, we go back 20 years. Maybe just short of 20 years. And I'm going to start with the. Listen, I knew you before this, otherwise I wouldn't have been there, but this is probably the earliest really vivid memory I have of you. And this goes back to the Sport Card Expo in Toronto. It must have been fall 2006, I'm guessing, November 2006. So what's that? That's already 16 years ago right there. And you were opening up a case of the inaugural issue of Upper Decks the Cup at the Upper Deck booth. And my vendor booth was like right across from it. So all I had to do was take a few steps to come and watch you open it. We knew each other. And like there was a huge crowd around you, Steve, a huge crowd, because it was the cup. It was a new product and the double rookie year. And you managed to pull a Sidney Crosby RPA from that case. Take me back to that moment. Take us back to that moment. What was that like for you? What is now 16 years ago?
Wow, that was a pretty crazy moment, Jeremy. So actually, I bought that case of the cup from someone at the show. So I didn't bring it with me. It wasn't intended. And people kept asking, was it for an investment or was it, were you going to break it sometime? And I just said, now's as good of a time as any. And that was the first time I think I met Carvin Chung in person as well, too. And I think when I was lugging this thing around, I said, well, why don't we just go do it now at the Upper Deck booth? And as I think it was pretty ad hoc, but definitely not planned. And as we started opening it, more and more people gathered around, and there was, some good buzz and everything else. And it was a fantastic time. Just opening product like that was, having a chance. 05-06 Cup again was the first one that really hooked me. I'm not usually a breaker, but I do break on very specific years. If it's the first of something, I'll go pretty deep on it. And that was one of those products where every time that I opened it, it felt so special. And every card that even if you just had a base card that was 130 point, the sheer weight of these things were really, really neat just out of the box. So, and I think I remembered pulling that Crosby was pretty surprising to me, because if you notice as a hobby veteran, small little things where if you see the darker RPAs in that year, they were level 2s out of 199. They were a little bit darker, but when you had the lighter edges, it was Crosby, Ovechkin, and Phaneuf that were the out of 99s. And I did see that. I saw the black patch, and I was like, oh, this could be pretty interesting. I saw a little bit of that Pittsburgh yellow, and there it was. It was a beautiful 2-color, and things that we can get into this, but things that I do regret. I have so much sentimental value for cards that I actually pulled. I'd be very happy to go reacquire that card, and because it's all the memories that really are associated with that. But couldn't have been any better. I mean, it was just unexpected, and it was the best possible outcome. And I remembered even the people cheering all around and all that as well too. So it was all really good, except the person that sold me the case was a little bit not that happy, but that was it.
Too bad for them. I mean, they sold you the case. After that, it's your case, right? So I'm sure they managed to get over it. Do you have any idea where that particular Crosby Cup RPA resides right now?
I do not. And through the power of your show and social media, if someone could find it, that would be pretty cool. It was a barely 2-colored. It was just a very small piece of yellow on a black patch on the bottom of the patch window there. That's all I remembered. But and I think it was 50 something. I think I have some image of it somewhere, but not well saved. But no, but it was just a really nice sentimental card that I really shouldn't have ever. You can call it upgrading to a 3-color, etc. But that's one I would have just kept.
Yeah, no doubt. It was. I remember it so well, and it was so much. That was really fun. It's crazy how like you're somebody I've known for a really long time in our hobby, really from back to maybe the late Beckett message board days, and from there. And it's interesting how there are lots of people who remain in the hobby, but there are people come and go over the years. And I think we're seeing in the past few years a lot of people come and go. But people who are truly passionate about sports cards and collecting and the community, they manage to stick around. Even if you take breaks here and there, you're likely to come back. And that explains a bit of your experience. I mentioned in the intro that your friend bought you a box of early Upper Deck Ice and you pulled a patch card. And that was your first time seeing one of these things. Nowadays, patch cards, we're used to them. They're not surprising. We're conditioned just to they're normal now. What was it like? If you can because even for people who have come into the hobby in the last 10 years, let's say, they probably they found out about them, but you pulled one and saw it for the first time after collecting, for on and off for the 15 years leading up to that. Tell us about how you felt, what it did in your mind when you saw that first patch card.
Yeah, so Upper Deck Ice 0506. So that was a Crosby and Ovechkin year as well. And I didn't even know, like, the base cards of these ice cards, I'll say they're about 55 point on the thickness. So even those cards alone, for me, I was just used to, 90, 91 Upper Deck, which is just your regular 30-point cards that come out. So I was used to those thickness. And I think just the feel of that, and they had the acetate cards as well too, so that was new for me to go see. And then I think when we hit the patch card itself, it just felt really weighty. That's probably the best word that I used for it. And we did a slow reveal as well, and I remembered very well because we're like, oh wow, it looks like it's got Pittsburgh colors on it, and everything looked great. And it was the Maxime Talbot instead of the Sidney Crosby out of 35, single black patch. But I kept on looking at this card like with and again, prior to that, it was just, regular thickness, 90-91 Upper Deck was what I was used to. So I didn't know anything like this was even possible. Didn't read the odds, this was just a leisurely, hey, let's have a nostalgia, old time, nice birthday present from a friend that I used to collect with. And, that was the first time I got very curious, and holding this card and having those thick magnet holders that are very common nowadays. I didn't know what one of those things was. Last time I collected was screw downs, back from 91 and all that. So yeah, it was really the presence of the card and the weight of it. It felt much more substantial is probably the word I'd use versus anything else that I've ever pulled from, from previous packs I've opened.
Right on. We are streaming live to Instagram as well for one of the first times we had a question. Dennis87 said, do you remember the player from Ice? And it was Maxime Talbot right there. So thanks. Okay, so let's move on from 0506 Cup. You then go into 0607, and you are looking to acquire the Cup RPAs, the rookie patch autos of the big names that year, which were really, if you think back, it was of Jenny Malkin, who's still a great player, Jordan Stahl, Phil Kessel, Radulov, a couple of others in that set. You opened up some of this and you looked at them, and what did you discover for the first time that you noticed?
Yeah, so it was pretty interesting because I remember having that chat with Carvin about this as well too, where he was right. So one of my first cases that I ended up opening, I pulled the card everyone, the big chase card, which was the Malkin out of 99. It was a beautiful 3-colored patch. Looked at it, I was really happy. Everything was great with it. Wanted to go start my PC around him. Turned it around, and that's the first time I saw photo shoot. And that was the first time when I said photo shoot. I'm not sure how I remember feeling uneasy, a little bit of, oh, am I getting my money's worth? What is this? Versus when I pulled and when I collected Ovechkin and Crosby RPAs the year prior, those were game used with a very strong certification in the back saying that they were game used from those specific players and used in NHL games. That was not the case. It was a photo shoot from a rookie photo shoot, was what the Malkins and everyone else in that product. So there was no more game used memorabilia, period. For the rookies specifically, for 06, 07 and onwards that I know of, except for limited logos in hockey. They started just after McKinnon years. So I guess 14, 15, they started having that be game used. And were you...
So learning that, you said you felt uneasy, but were you still willing to collect those? And perhaps, I mean, even the third year of the Cup, 07-08, we had a big rookie class in Jonathan Taves and Patrick Kane, Carey Price. How did you adjust, if at all, your hobby behavior moving forward based on that those rookie cards no longer contained? Because the Crosby and Ovechkin from 05-06 did contain game used memorabilia. But after that, they didn't. And there's logistical reasons why Upper Deck didn't and still doesn't do that. But how did you adjust your behavior?
Yeah, it took me a while to go find my equilibrium, I'll say. As in, I probably bought a whole bunch of those, sold a whole bunch of those, and did it probably 3 or 4 times. Had a very love-hate relationship with a lot of it. And in the end, I'm just very comfortable now not having any of them. I'll keep, for Malkin myself, I keep one specific card as a Malkin collector, and I think that's his best card in the Ultimate Collection 0607 Ultimate Rookie Shield, Auto Shield. So I keep that. And then same for, as a Patrick Kane collector, finding the same version, but 0708 Ultimate Auto Rookie Shield of Kane. Both of those are still photo shoot, but for me, those were the most substantial cards that were produced for the rookie year.
And have you been sort of keeping up over the years since 0607 with how the language on the back of the card, how the I call them the certification on the back of the card, how the language has evolved in describing what that memorabilia on the front of the card is? Or have you been watching that over the years?
Yeah, so it's an interesting conversation, because I think your show's done a great job just bringing that up to light. I know it's something that you care very dearly about. I'd say interesting because if you take a look at market and market pricing for specific cards, I think Carvin was right when Carvin said, when the RPAs are going to be the chase card, if they're game used or if they're not, it's not going to go change that being the RPA itself. If Upper Deck at that time was to go spend more dollars, be able to spend more dollars on other parts of the product, it did make sense. So I understood it from that point of view. But I have been following that language, and sadly, that language has gotten looser and looser. It looks like the lawyers are certainly getting their hands into it that way. I think there's documented cases of wrong patches, incorrect patches that don't match, etc. But I can see it from the legal point of view. But as a collector and as a hobbyist, it's sad to see. I think I might have mentioned I was considering chasing a 2021 National Treasures basketball, a larger rookie card. And when I kind of looked at the back of that certification, and it was just pretty much, it looked like a full disclosure agreement of this has any event, it's not tied to any event, any game, any player. And it was, wow, like that just seems like that just seemed like it seemed like a raw deal, as someone that wanted to go buy that card. And if I was to go break product like on the pricing of National Treasures, I would expect more.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that there have been mistakes, and mistakes are going to be made. But as a collector, as a hobbyist, lifelong hobbyist, and want to continue being one, to me, Steve, I would rather that the backs of the cards did a better job of explaining what was on the front in light of I would prefer that they didn't go so vague. If the reason they're so vague is because they're afraid that there are going to be mistakes where the wrong, a patch ends up in a card that is obviously not for that player. It's not even from that player's team. That's going to happen. I'm willing to give them a pass on that, here and there. If you just kind of look at the error rates or that companies have in tech, even 5%, if whatever is acceptable in other industries, I don't know if it's 1%, 5%, probably not 5, but if it's 1% for every iPhone that's made isn't going to work, or 1% of this or that, I would be willing to overlook some issues, but I would do that in exchange for better language on the back of the cards. I also would like to know, because the back of the cards say certified to us as being. I'd like to know who they're certified by. Certified to us by, fill in the blank, as being. That would give me comfort. What do you think of that idea? And listen, it's not like they're going to they're just going to implement this listening to this podcast, but I think it's worthy of discussion. What do you think?
I think so. This is a strange one, because I would believe that you and I are in the minority on how much value we place on that specifically. Because when I start taking a look at the market for some very significant cards, I'm not sure that if people are paying what they're paying and looking at the backs of those cards, I would say, on a business front, if I was a card company, I wouldn't change it, because looks like everything's fine from a secondary market point of view.
Yeah.
I want it to change, but just trying to be practical here as I am as a person. If I were the card company, I don't see, it's not a big enough problem. They have bigger problems than that.
Yeah. Well, right now it isn't a big enough problem, but you never know what the future holds. As collectors demand more clarity and transparency on what it is that they're putting, to buy this product, these products are not cheap. And if you're putting big money in, you want to kind of know what you're getting, I think. I wanted to talk to you also about the limited logos. I know you were really into the limited logos from 0506, but first, let's just go and say hello. We haven't gone to the comments yet. Want to say hi to Mark Santucci, Jake Dahl, Steven, what's going on? Happy holidays to you. Mike Double V, happy holidays to you. Terry Fortune says should be a good show. Where has Steven been hiding? He comes and goes.
Hey, Terry, how are you?
Bill, the Loud Collector, Merry Christmas. What's going on? B. Cox, welcome to the show. Jeff McMahon, RB, good to see you. Merry Christmas. Al G, happy holidays. Season's best. Daniel, Justin Bode is here. Papa Jim, Merry Christmas to you. Todd McDonald, good evening. Thank you for consuming this content for the year, and I look forward to having you back next year. Didn't forget about Leighton Sheldon's giveaway. You have to be here watching. Leighton will join us in about 10 minutes for the vintage spotlight segment, and we will be doing 2 giveaways for $250 each. Store credit to his eBay store. You can either use it to buy something or to knock down the price on something you want. Pretty generous of him. He's in the holiday spirit. Studio Sports, what's going on? Robert Scott, Orlando from A Collector's Dream. Good to see you. Good to see you. Foul 5 ball. Jeremy, good to see you. Terry says it pretty deep is an understatement. Stephen and Mark used to bust pallets of the cup. Do you want to let us know what Terry's referring to here?
Sure. That's a good long time ago, Terry. And I think I actually remembered. I may be wrong, but I don't think I am. So I may mention that you did have one of those 0506 out of 99s. Wasn't a Crosby, wasn't a Phaneuf, BGS 95 that I think we did a deal on, many years ago. I might be wrong on that. I don't think so, but yeah, I think for breaking wise, I think 0506 was probably ended up doing 30 plus 6 tin cases myself, and I had loose boxes and 3 tin cases kind of spread out on top of that. But I think it was all Mark's product, but it was pretty much on a 06, 07. We kind of split. I did about 10, and then I stopped after the photo shoot bit keses. Didn't really crack anything there until 15, 16. And then that must have been 80 plus cases of 610 for a McDavid year. That was quite something else. And and then I think after that was just F1 for me on 2020 Dynasty. Those were the big breaks for me.
80 cases of the cup, you guys. That would be quite the experience. And how long does it take to break 80 cases of the cup?
It's funny because it's everyone's different. I like to go take my time with even the small cards. Where the hits are going to be, and it's pretty systematic after a little while. But wow, it was we would spread it out over a couple of days here and there, and it was sometimes it'd be like, how do you sleep? What else is inside the cases? You might kind of sneak 1 or 2 cases before you kind of go again the next day. But this is all the passion and fun of just being a little kid and just seeing what's in the box, and but it is really quite something when as this I like my numbers as well too. But I remember doing various spreadsheets thinking that was probably a big enough subset on sample size just to go see how many limited logos we would get, how many during that year. I remember we pulled more. We had I think it was 7 McDavids RPAs, exquisite and the cup, and I think we had 4 exquisites even though they were out of 97 versus 3 of the cup. And we definitely did extremely well for that. We didn't. I'm gonna forget the other Eichel. We didn't have too much, but we had 0 of Panarin. That was the other 99. We didn't have 1 Panarin out of all that. So but when you start lumping together just out of our level 1 out of 99s and all that, I think we might have started getting enough kind of probabilities on what you're really going to get inside the cup.
So here's a little story for you. You guys cracked 80 cases of that product. I didn't break any of it, but I did go into a 1-pack group break at a local card shop here in Calgary, where the store owner basically sold 30 spots, whatever we paid, $20 a spot. Maybe I don't remember what it was, probably $20 a spot for $600 for the total 1-pack, 6 card pack. And you would put your hand into the bag to pull out your teams randomly. He had those little mini coffee mugs, like those little coffee mugs with the team logos on them. And that would be your team. You'd have this little plastic coffee mug. Anyway, I managed to pull my 3 teams. One of them was the Edmonton Oilers. So he goes and he opens up the pack, and I managed to get the dual scripted swatches of Connor McDavid and Wayne Gretzky. Okay. One pack. I bought 3 teams out of 30. So I had a 1 in 10 chance of getting the Oilers. And then our pack had a 1 in 6 chance of being the case hit pack.
Yep.
And then that case hit had a 1 in whatever chance of being a big card like that. I got so lucky. I ended up winning that card. And then I guess I shared it on Hobby Insider or whatever. Your friend Mark caught wind of it. And after you and him broke those 80 cases or over 100 cases of 15, 16 the cup, you guys didn't pull one copy of that card. So he needed it. And I ended up selling it to him. We did I got some cards back from him as well. And he bought that card from me traded for a value that is now probably 10% of what it is now, which is fine. That's what it was then. But what luck I had on that night at Maple Leaf Sports here in Calgary to get so lucky. And it was just funny that you and Mark didn't pull that exact card. So it wasn't a card for my PC at the time, and I found a good home for it. But I thought that was kind of an interesting tie-in to your story.
Yeah, very cool. So
Michael Hathaway from MC Sports Cards says a proper F1 collecting legend, Mr. Fosh. Looking forward to this. Michael, good to see you. Happy holidays. Adam Gray says, love this chat so far. Love the Crosby story. Adam, welcome to the show. Clay Phillips, what's going on? The professor is here as well. And we've got 90s hockey guy in the house joining us again as usual. Good to see you. Andrew Gogan, happy holidays to you. Les Edwards says, nice to put a face to the name, Mr. Fosh. Looking forward to this. Louis, who will be my special guest co-host tomorrow night on the PWCC Weekly Hockey Auction Watch Party. Colin Murray, what's going on? Brendan Ryan, Merry Christmas to you as well. All right. I wanted to, before we get off of the cup and stuff, I want to go back to the limited logos because you were collecting them back in the day. You ended up deciding not to keep them. What happened with limited logos that you decided not to kind of PC them on a long-term basis?
So there were 2 subsets specifically for the cup that were really tough for me. Limited logos being the first one. So this was the first time they did outsized patches, really beautiful. However, there was an auto issue with the card itself. So I think Carver and I have had a longer chat about that. It's one of his frustrations because this set would be legendary if the autos would stay. However, through time, I think I don't know what the best way to call it is, but it's almost, if you were to sign something that was a little bit wet and the pen ink just started blobbing, the autos kind of did that over time. And even some of the redemptions I had as well too, they didn't stay very well at all. So they were very, very tough to keep, very well preserved. So eventually those cards for me, as great as I had some pretty awesome copies of Crosby and Ovechkin, never ended up keeping any of them. Those ones I definitely bought and sold enough times, and I loved the logos, but just the auto was so distracting to me, sadly. Ovi's especially during that year was very memorably, never saw a good copy of that I wanted to keep for the long term. So that was one set, and the other one was the Emblems of Endorsement that was out of 15. And for me, wow, when I take a look at, that's always a card that stays in my mind, and things that could have been, where that Crosby out of 15, I think I've had 5 or 6 of those copies in my life. I do not own one now. I'm not sad. It's kind of one of the first couple of years. I'm not sad about not owning one, because that sticker auto for me, I just, I have gone through sticker autos, maybe kind of yes, no. And then I realized over the last couple, probably the last year, that was a really expensive lesson from a 2020 F1 Chrome, buying the auto variation set of all of that, and then fire selling it 2 or 3 months after I realized it wasn't for me. Yeah, that was not the best way of having a 6-digit loss, but that's what it was. And I will remember, no more stickers for me. But yeah, sticker autos for me on things. Just realized, just had to go through it enough. But yeah, they're not going to be something that I ever want to really care to chase in my main PC. Although did pick up one recently, as much as I say that, but that was as you said, there are going to be a couple of exceptions to the rules, but no stickers for me unless it's got to be really something pretty interesting.
It's our prerogative to break our own hobby rules once in a while, as far as what we allow into our PC. And I go the same way, Steve. I don't want sticker autos in my collection it also just provides an easy sort of boundary to put in place so that, okay, it's sticker. I just don't need to acquire it for my collection. But then I think to myself, well, what happens if the card companies go away from on card totally and only ever do sticker autos? Then where does that leave me as a collector? Do I only collect non-autograph cards, or do I start welcoming sticker autos back into my collection? And if I do, then am I going to become looser as I go back in time to when there were on cards and now? So I don't know. I don't want to think about that happening. If it happens, I'll deal with it when that time comes. Triple V, Merry Christmas to you. Phil Daw says very few limited logos are actually game news. Be very careful and read the back of every card. He's talking about rookie limited logos. He clarifies right here. Thanks, Phil, and welcome to the show. Steve, I want to ask you about limited logos because this year, for the first time, the product that just came out a few days ago, for the first time ever, has limited logos that do not have autographs on them. And we have seen them before where Leaf had signed a player to an exclusive, like Jack Eichel, right? But outside of that scenario, we've never seen an unautographed limited logo, at least that I'm aware of. So this year, there are limited logos that do not have autographs. And I think it's simply because Upper Deck doesn't have deals with those players, but they had some nice memorabilia and they wanted to make some cards. So my personal thoughts are, listen, it's not ideal. I know it rubs a lot of people the wrong way. They're saying, well, maybe just come up with a different subset. Don't call them limited logos. Call them something else. Or this is basically ultimate premium swatches or something like that. I think I'm a little bit more lenient. I think to myself, well, limited logos are about the logo, the patch. They're not about the name doesn't really reference the autograph anyway, even though that's what they've been historically. I'm more lenient than many people. Just my approach. I don't hold anyone else. I'm not upset with anybody who has the opposing view. I'm just more lenient. Where do you fall on that particular issue?
I definitely know a few hardcore limited logo, set collectors, and I could not imagine how they would be feeling right now. I think they would feel extremely let down. They would feel that, changing that without the auto does change the set materially. And maybe it's good that I'm not a set collector, but if I were a set collector, I'd feel really let down by that. I think that is actually a really big negative thing, unfortunately, and I didn't know that. So thanks for bringing that up to me. But I would, if I were them, I'd like to go call it something else and just preserve the limited logos being what they are. But I also understand your point of view when you are talking about limited logos. Anyone outside coming in will say, well, it's all about the logo and the patch. But when you've started off the precedent being 0506 Cup, and you've had logos, auto patch logos on card all the time, every year until this year. Yeah, I'm not a fan of that. That's not a good call in my opinion.
Yeah, it's and listen, I don't know exactly why they make those decisions. I surely understand your perspective. If you're a set collector, then my response to that would be, well, take a year off. And I know that's not what people want to hear, or just don't collect the ones that don't have autographs on. See, here's a similar thing. As I collect these cards, the Cup base patch parallels every year from the 0506s that look like this all the way to modern stuff. And in about 2013 or 14, they started adding autographs, and all that did was drive up the price of these cards for me to collect. And I thought, I'm just not going to collect I'm just going to not collect the ones that have autographs. That, again, it allowed me to limit what I was collecting, save some money that way from buying these cards. And but I was okay with it. I didn't hold any angst. I didn't get mad at anybody. I just didn't collect the ones that didn't fit my set collecting. And maybe because I approach something similar this way, that's why I'm more lenient. But I definitely understand the position of the set collector who does limited logos every year into completion. And they still, but in that case, still collect them. I think you could still collect them. But again, that's just, if they don't have autographs, you're going to get them for cheaper as well. So it's interesting topic. And it is a crossroads for, I think, many people. I know a lot of people have big issues with this year's Cup for that reason. And here's another one I don't know if you're aware of, Stephen. Leighton Sheldon will be joining us shortly. Another thing that they changed up this year, Steve, is honorable numbers. Now they're not necessarily numbered to the player's jersey number. They might be numbered to the amount of All-Star game appearances they were in, or the year that they were drafted. So Connor McDavid is out of 15 for the year 2015. I like it. I think it's neat. I think it spices things up a bit.
Yeah.
But other people, and I've had a lot of people. I've had about the same amount of people, because I did a story post saying I like it. I think it's different. I like mixing it up. I've had about the same amount of people saying, "What are you, crazy?" to the same amount of people saying, "I like it too." What are your thoughts?
That one's tougher for me. Like, I actually, going back quickly to your thought about just collecting limited logos that you like, I actually really like that. I think that's how people are going to find more peace. And again, we're not deciding here as the consumer. You know, the product's going to be the product. If you don't like it, walk away. Don't waste any time thinking about it and get angry, etc. And just if you like it, go do it. And I like that rule that you have for yourself, Jeremy. I like that. Going back to your question on the numbers, I'm really picky about numbers. If there's something that I know that really, gets me to go say, will I go all out for a card? Will I just kind of, what type of copy is this card? If they're serial numbered, if there's something significant to the player, I care about that the most. If you mentioned because it's 2015 and that's why Connor McDavid is 15, that's a little bit too loose for me. That's not interesting enough. But maybe if I can bring up one card that someone mentioned that you and I have to use this term for the first time, but card bros on, is we have an 05-06 Wayne Gretzky honorable numbers game used LA Kings. It's just such a gorgeous card. But that one's out of 9, and that's much less than 99 being his jersey number. But that card is one of my favorite cards that I have in my collection that I can just look on and on. It's just everything is just beautiful with it. And that is okay for me because it's close enough to 99.9. There's something there that makes it okay, and it's significantly less. But I think when you're talking, and this is like number pieces for exquisite basketball, like this is what we're really talking about. But I think when it gets down to the player's number, and then you have the numbering that is cut out for that patch window as well too. And then if I don't, it would irk me quite a bit if I did see the serial number that didn't match, unless it was like at times they did some SPs and some SSPs that were significantly less, but to like 50 or 25 or even out of 15 and 10s that I've seen, that's kind of okay. But if you're putting it towards a specific year, I don't know, it's not quite strong enough for me, but I think I would differ towards I'd like it the old way.
Yeah, and a lot of people do. They want that consistency year over year. The professor points out that Josh from the Hockey Cards Gong Show was talking to Billy Celio from Upper Deck, and Josh pointed out that the Cole Caulfield rookie patch was not player game worn, which Billy was not aware of. That actually, the fact is they are game worn, I believe, player worn or game worn. I think game worn, but they literally got the copy on the back of the card was wrong versus what the patch was. Professor also says, interesting that the cup cards just released were hand-packed in North Carolina. They've been hand-packed in North Carolina going back almost 20 years now. I was lucky to attend one of those cup pack-outs in North Carolina back in 2009. So I've been to that facility. I know what it looks like. And that's where they have been doing that. There's an Upper Deck facility there. Okay. All right, Steve. Leighton Sheldon has joined us for the Vintage Spotlight segment. I'm going to bring him on in just a second, but everybody needs to understand that if you want to win, you want a chance to win one of Leighton's two $250 store credit giveaway, store credit for his eBay store, Just Collect. You need to be here on YouTube watching this. You can't be on Facebook. You can't be on LinkedIn, Twitter, Twitch, or Instagram. You have to be here on YouTube. So come over to YouTube if you're on any of those other platforms right now. Let's bring out Leighton, and we're going to do what we always do on the Vintage Spotlight segment. We're going to start with Steve has a question for Leighton. Leighton has a question for Steve. We'll talk about some topics, and then we'll do the giveaways. Leighton, there he is. Welcome back, buddy. How are you? Happy holidays to you and your family.
Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. What a great time of year.
It is. And I want to introduce you to Steve. This is Steve. Steve, this is Leighton. Say hi, guys.
Pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
All right, so let's jump into it. Steve, did you manage to come with a question for Leighton, who is a baseball card vintage treasure hunter? He has his podcast, Trading Card Therapy, which has its 50th episode coming up by the end of the year. Leighton, more giveaways on your podcast. I saw that on Instagram today as well. Everybody, make sure you're following Leighton. He's a great supporter of this show. He's a great hobbyist, a great ambassador to the hobby. Follow him on Instagram at Leighton_Sheldon and at just_collect. Now let's get on with it. Steve, what kind of question did you bring for Mr. Leighton Sheldon, please?
I'm going to read it because it's prepared, but it's one I've given some real thought to, and also thinking about myself as a more of a focused on the modern collection, and also one big reason where vintage has me a little bit more tepid. So with that, my question is, with the proliferation of AI, I think the authenticity and provenance will be increasingly more challenged for vintage cards over modern cards. So is this a concern for vintage collectors? And if it is, how best can vintage collectors defend their cards' integrity to keep long-term value intact?
Well, Steve, it's probably the most intricate question I think I've ever received on Sports Card Live. So you really put me to the test here at the end of the year. But the joking aside, it's a great question. I've thought about AI a lot. And I mean, listen, this is only one man's opinion, in my humble opinion. But I think AI is really going to do a lot for vintage. And the reason being, Steve, is that, these cards were made with so many different variances back when, candidly, no one really was producing cards for value. They were actually produced to market many other things besides the actual cards themselves. And so I think that AI is going to bring some intelligence to the field where, hey, listen, do I think I have some intelligence with all my experience? Yes, but I'm only one person and only what can fit my brain, right? That's it. And so as far as AI, I think it's going to bring some standardization, Steve, to vintage. And listen, there's going to be, right, some people who will argue against, for example, maybe the centering that's determined by AI will be just ever so slightly off. And I'm just making it up, of course. I don't think that's going to be the case. But I do think it's going to bring some standardized, data to the vintage field. And as far as authenticity, maybe this is just way out there, but I feel like right now there are still some people who can't necessarily tell or determine if a card, a vintage card for that matter, is real or authentic. And I have to believe, Steve, that AI is going to go a long way to solve that. Because you're talking about black and white, meaning it's real or not. I got to think that computers are going to help us there. So I think net, although there is some things to be, if you will, concerned about, I think net that AI will actually be a positive for vintage cards as far as grading, authentication. And then you did talk about some provenance. I think provenance in general is actually, underrated as far as vintage and even modern cards go. I myself, if I was pulling or buying a expensive Luca, I'd want to know where it came from. Just like if I was buying an expensive mantle, I personally would love to know that it belonged to Joe Smith, who used to live at 123 Main Street in Brooklyn. But that's just me. I hope I did a good job of answering your question for you, Steve.
You did. I thought that was really great. I definitely agree with the grading side, and I'm looking at Jeremy's shirt and speaking with Steve and some of the people over at Tag as well too. That definitely I can see great things that are hopefully coming down that AI will solve on the grading side for consistency. I think more of my concerns is less of when that something is real and more about AI in the way that how good fake imaging can be, other people saying that they own your card, things like that are, I hate to go bring up, but the more negative side of the hobby of, kind of everything else that way. But I love the answer though, Leighton, I appreciate it.
Sorry, Jeremy. I just wanted to say this. See, you asked a great question. So I have a lot of people who contact me. It's unfortunate every week, fake 52 mantles, reprints of the T206 Eddie Plank. Of course, God knows how many T206 Honus Wagners I see on an annual basis that are not real. But when you're talking about AI, Steve, I actually think it's going to be able to bring a standardization and be able to explain to these folks, the dot matrix in the background of your Eddie Plank is clearly fake because of X, Y, and Z. And so I do think it's going to actually be extremely advantageous in terms of telling people if their cards are simply real, i.e. black and white, is it real or not?
I like that. Thank you, Leighton.
I got a couple of things I want to jump in with. Really, really great stuff. Great question, Steve. Leighton, great answer. First thing, you mentioned provenance. I just want to tell a very quick story. I recently sold a card to a fellow collector via Instagram, and at the very end of the negotiation, he said to me, "Where did you get the card?" And I said, "Well, I got it at the Edmonton Expo from so and so." He said, "I said, why?" He said, "I want to know if there's any video of it being broken out of the pack so I can verify that it's authentic." He wanted provenance on it. So I reached out to the guy. I remembered who I bought it from. And he said, unfortunately, and he was a breaker, but he unfortunately wasn't the person who pulled it. He didn't remember where he got it from. So I couldn't give, but the buyer still went through and took the card from me. Beautiful card. But that just shows how provenance is something that more and more people are mindful of and are going to be looking for. So that's one thing that breakers are one of the values that breaking is on video is bringing to the hobby is providing that provenance. And it's pretty important. I think we also talked a bit about AI here. So I want to clarify for anybody who doesn't know that tag is often thought of as AI grading, but it's not. Tag is not AI. Tag is automated grading, technically speaking. So I can't speak to AI grading, but I also want to mention that I just listened to a podcast the other day where Mike Moynihan was interviewing Nat Turner of PSA, president, CEO, whatever his title is. And he mentioned that they are using AI now at PSA, but they're not using it to grade. They're using it to identify counterfeit cards. And that's where I think it's going to provide a great value. And I'm happy to hear that PSA, being the leader in vintage grading, is doing that because there are so many counterfeits going around. I'm sure you all have heard this, the statistic that they recently, turned down, like whatever, 20% of Jordan 86 Fleers submitted were identified as fake by PSA, which is, it's great that they're identifying them. But, and then my mind goes, well, how many did they miss out of those? Did they miss, if any? Just wondering. But I'm glad to hear that they're utilizing AI in that way to identify fake cards. Okay, those were my thoughts on any follow-up to any of that before we ask Leighton to approach Steve with, or to deliver his question or topic to Steve. Any response, guys? No? Okay. Leighton, did you come any question or comments for Steve based on what we've got so far?
I do, but it's actually unrelated to cards because you guys were kind enough to kind of copy me on the emails. And so, Steve, from what I can tell, it seems like you collect a lot of different things.
I do.
And so I'm curious, what in it, if it's recent, if it's older, so be it, but not card related.
Mm-hmm.
What collectible, when you first laid eyes on it, were you like, OMG, this is unbelievable. I've got to own either that or I've got to own an example of this. I'd love to know what stopped you in your tracks.
Two things. I think I'll start off. Other collections that I have that rank above cards for me are cars, and past was watches as well too, and then also wine for me. Wine's taken a very big backseat to that, all of that. So behind cards now. Say between cars and watches, I'm not going to be able to tell you which one was the first one, but they're such two big ones, and watches has fallen also to the wayside for me, but cars has gotten stronger. So, but I'd say it's one thing that Jeremy and I had talked about, it's not just, for watches for me, I don't go into enough events. I like the art of it more than the science of it, to be honest. And, it's probably a faux pas thing to say, but that's what it is for me. I think with the cars has always been about driving passion and experience. And that's what that community there is so strong and so great. And that's what I never expected that to happen with cards specifically, but it kind of happened again for me this year. And I'd say since, Topps 2020 F1, coming out, really got me, I think I got in and out of hockey because I got everything I wanted and there was nothing else for me to chase. And then F1 came out, and then through F1, I have met such amazing people, reconnected with a lot of older friends, but a lot of new friends that are just like passions. They've gotten me, I don't know, maybe not a great thing, but they've got me some into vintage. Some have got me into basketball, modern, and all these other things, but it was such a strong community where it's just building friendships and just building great relationships and opening up your mind to new things and new perspectives and just meeting awesome people with new backgrounds. So I think that's what the commonality for me, Leighton, is. It's probably cars or watches, but it was based on something that's passionate and a connection that you want to share with someone else. And I think it's one of those two. I can't answer which one, Leighton.
Well, I appreciate you share with me, and listen, as myself, who's a fellow hobbyist and collector, I've started to dabble in comics and toys, and listen, maybe one day, Stephen, be successful enough to look at cars and get reacquire my dad's old Mustang. But I find it fascinating that sometimes we get so stuck, I guess, in our card lane that we forget about that the world is full of really some just amazing pieces of history. Fantastic collectibles. And so, when we crossed paths on tonight's show and Jeremy kind of gave me a precursor, I had done a little bit of research. Yeah, I think it's amazing some of the different collectibles you're in. And yeah, candidly, even though I don't necessarily know I'm going to start collecting them, I love hearing about other people's passions and kind of what makes them stop in their tracks.
Yeah. It's a great question, Leighton. Really appreciate that. Made me think too.
All right, good stuff, guys. Thank you to both of you. Let's go to a few comments, and we're going to do the giveaways. Jeremy M., good evening to you. Mike Petty says, yeah, the Vince Vaughn doppelganger, talking vintage, my favorite segment. Leighton's similarness to good old Vince Vaughn.
Get it all the time, Jeremy.
Jake Dahl says, good evening. Louis says, I don't win anything, so good luck to the rest of you all tonight. Orlando likes the vintage talk. Justin Bode wishes you a Merry Christmas. Leighton, the professor, says Jeremy mentioned he used ChatGPT in buying a card. Thus, he used generative AI, and he's referring to negotiated with somebody on a card about a week and a half ago, and he's a francophone, and English is not his first language. So I used ChatGPT to translate what I wanted, so I could butter him up a little bit by speaking to him in his own language, and I think it worked. I think he was. I think I buttered him up enough to get him to get the deal done with me. Okay, so we are going to do the giveaways. We have Leighton. Leighton, first of all, before we do them, I'd like you to just explain what these are and maybe what you're feeling right now at this time of year.
Sure. So the first thing is we're giving away tonight on Jeremy's show, Sports Card Live. We're going to give away two $250 call them gift certificates or gift cards to my eBay store, just_collect. And what I think is really cool is you can use those particular gift cards to buy cards that are $250 or less, or if you'd like to buy something that's a little bit more expensive, you can use it towards that. And the reason why I offered it is very simple. I'm just so appreciative and grateful to be doing something that I'm passionate about for a living. I do think the Jets have made a mistake. They should have asked me to be their quarterback. If you look at all these years later, they're still having problems. But that joking aside, I really do. I'm very grateful to be in this hobby and to do this for a living. And so because I'm able to do this, I thought it would be nice to give away some vintage cards to the community. And actually, Jeremy, I credit you because as we're sitting here and talking about this now, we were actually only going to give away a $500 gift certificate to one person. Credit to Jeremy for saying, the more the merrier. So that is why we decided to divide it up and have a couple winners on tonight's show. And it's very simple. All you have to do is go to my eBay store, just_collect, choose the cards you're interested in, send me a DM on Instagram, or you can email me directly at Leighton, Leighton, at justcollect.com, and I'll make sure we take care of you.
All right. Well, thanks again, Leighton. Yeah, it's nice to nice to split it up a little bit. A couple of winners. Orlando says Leighton Claus. Colin says Canadian. This will be U.S. dollars. Leighton is out of the U.S.
Yes.
All right. So here's what we're gonna do. You are in order to win this, to win the first giveaway, you need to put something. You need to put a comment in the chat. And I think Leighton, what I want to do because I think we're gonna use the word thankful. You have to put hashtag thankful. So here you go. Right there, you can see. I'm gonna hit start collecting comments. That's what you have to type into the chat. And if you put that into the chat, starting right now, you will have a chance to win. Because once we have some entries, I will hit the draw button, and then we will the opportunity to win will be over. So write hashtag thankful and put it into the chat. And let's give it a minute or so here, Leighton and Steve. And in the meantime, I'm curious, Steve, any plans between now and New Year's? Any plans to travel? Anything you want to share? What's going on with you and your family over the holidays here?
Not too much. I think heading over to sunnier Arizona and warmer Arizona, and then probably heading up to Whistler for some skiing, and then just some good family time. Not too much planned, but I think heading to the Suns and Mavericks game on Christmas Day, so that'll be fun to see. So yeah, not too much this year. Trying to do less.
Very nice. Well, we only have 30 entries. We have over 90 people watching right now. So let's keep getting those entries in, guys. If you're a little behind, that'll just be too bad. But hopefully we get several more entries. Leighton, how about you? What's going on for the holidays?
Well, my son is spending Christmas with his mother, and then my son's birthday, his 9th, in fact, is actually the day after Christmas. So I'm throwing him a birthday party, which we're very excited about. And then I don't know who out there that's listening to this is into EDM, which is a certain kind of music, but a very, I guess, like famous international performer named Nora En Pure is going to be in Brooklyn next Friday, December 29th. And I've never seen her before. It's her first appearance ever in the U.S. So I'm going to go check her out with a friend of mine.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, all right, guys, lots of people don't want to enter. That is fine. You do not have to. But this is it's $250 USD that you can spend at the Just Collect eBay store with no strings attached. So we are going. Okay, some more entries are coming in right now. We're up to 38 entries. We've got 84 people with us right now. So let's see if we get one or two more. But we are going to be doing 2 draws. Welcome everybody to the show. And that's it. We're going to the first one right now. Here we go. You can see it's going randomly. And our first winner is going to be Tyson Corner Cards. Congratulations, Tyson Corner Cards. You need to reach out to Leighton, as he mentioned, either on Instagram or on email. His Instagram accounts are in the chat. You can also reach out to me if you need to, if you don't get a hold of him anyway, and I will put you in touch with Leighton. All right, we're going to do that again. We're going to do this again now. We're going to use a different hashtag this time. We're going to use, just because I don't know if we can use the same one twice. We're going to use a different one. And Tyson, you're not eligible. Leighton, what should they have to write into the chat to win this one?
Hobby love.
Hobby love. Hobby love. One word. Start collecting. You can all, if you didn't win, you have another shot, guys, at winning a second $250 gift certificate to the Just Collect eBay store. Get your entries in again. Hobby love. We love the hobby here on Sports. Steve, do you love the hobby? Do you love it? Loves the hobby. Loves the hobby. Get your entries in, guys, and we will draw in a couple of minutes here. I wanted to, Steve, I'm gonna ask you a question here. And Leighton, this is a pretty funny story. So, Steve, you've gotten to know Adam Gray as of late. Adam is my co-host on the PWCC Premier auction coverage one Thursday of every month. We just did it last Thursday. And tell us the story about that one card that you may have cost him a few extra dollars on. I don't know. Tell us that story, and then we'll do the draw, the Hobby Love draw.
Sure. This was actually a really great story. Look, I think for me, and this is me about the hobby, I think I've always been about people first. So, I think Adam, I reached out to Adam because I've seen him on your show enough times, Jeremy, and, just seeing him as a very enthusiastic, super knowledgeable Kobe collector. And I was looking at that point for, just one Kobe card to add to my collection, but one and done. That was all I really wanted. I reached out to Spinatron as well too. He's been an absolutely amazing person, just guiding me along my basketball ways as well too. And through kind of both of them, and I started off. It was pretty intense with Adam when I reached out. It was, wow, I know so much about this card. I'm like, wow, okay, you're confirming every single reason why this is exactly what I want to go on about. And then I think half an hour in of just very furious back and forth Instagram chats, he said, "Oh, I did actually might have wanted to make a play on this card at some time." And I kind of said, "Oh, well, you know what? It didn't, in my opinion, feel fair." So I said, "Hey, you've told me you're kind of educating the enemy, if you will, as in, the person that might be bidding against you." And, before I headed to dinner, and I did tell Adam, I said, "Look, I'm going to be good for my word. I don't do this with, obviously, there's just too much at stake at that point." But I gave him my exact number down to the strange single dollar of what I actually, my max bid for that card. And I saw it transact when I got back from dinner at $50 higher than my number. And I'm glad that Adam also said that, because I remember hearing him somewhere saying that, if I didn't give it, I gave it out of respect to give him the option, should he want to. That's the only reason I gave the number, and it was up to Adam. And I'm so happy to go. It was tough seeing all the MC Mondays and everything else go through, the cards that he was, I remember a lot of big Harry Potter cards that he was going, "Ooh, that's tough," and things like that. But, congratulations, Adam. It was just, one of those cards for me that I like things that are not really well known, didn't have a lot of notoriety. I think there were 3 copies of it.
What was the card? What was the card?
So this was the first Kobe Bryant NBA Logo Man, Logo Mania 1 of 1. I'm going to forget the exact
autograph
year.
As well.
The first autographed Logo Man, and there were 3 of those cards in that set for that year. And I know one of them that was the highest graded one had a picture with him in the headband. That had a super high comp. Was almost $1 million at some time during the last few years. And then the copy that was there was the copy that was there for me. I know it had some spots on it and whatever else. I actually kind of liked it more, but it was Kobe without the headband, and it was a better shot for me. And it was just kind of, I'm sure I'm not stepping up to any silly price tag like that for myself. But, this one here that I was like, hey, if I can kind of maybe take it at 20% of that comp or something else, this is something I would never move. And it was special enough. And so anyways, Adam felt everything that I told Adam on this is how I'm looking at it was like, yeah, you're looking at it right. And I'm like, oh shoot, okay, the more you're telling me this kind of, put me in that situation. But for me, it's always person first before cards. That's just how I am. Nice. That's what it was.
Very nice. All right, so we are at 40. That whole story that Steve just told, we got, I think, one more bid came in from Hobby Champs. If you have not yet done this, we got well over 80 people, and we only have 40 entries into this giveaway for $250 to the Just Collect eBay store. So get that in there, #HobbyLove, and we're going to do that draw in less than 1 minute. Adam does say that was one of the funnest memories in the hobby, Steve. Very nice. Brendan Ryan says, no one likes to lose a bid 1 penny over their magic number. No, 1 increment even over their hobby number. For sure. Justin Bode, feel that hobby love. Attaboy, Justin. Good to see you too, pal. All right, guys, we're going to do the draw, the hobby love draw for the second $250 gift card for Leighton Sheldon's Just Collect eBay store. 1, 2, 3. Here we go. Draw. Let's see whose name comes up. You don't want to see your name yet. Louis wins it. Louis, who said he doesn't win anything. So good luck, everybody. And Louis, you're going to get to meet Louis. He will be my special guest co-host tomorrow night on the PWCC Hockey Weekly Auction Ending Watch Party. Congratulations, Louis. We'll have something to talk about tomorrow as well. Louis out of Minnesota, Leighton. So good to see that. Some congratulations coming in. He says, must have been rigged. Absolutely. There's nothing I can do. This is a StreamYard tool. That's all that is. But there we go, Louis. Congratulations. That's really, really cool. Adam says, Leighton, this was super generous, man. Yeah, very nice. Very nice. Mike Double V, thank you, Leighton, for the draw. Thank you so much for doing it, says Adam. Yeah, Leighton, that was awesome, man. Thank you for just spreading the love during the holiday season here in 2023. Appreciate it, man.
Oh, listen, my pleasure. I really enjoyed being on the show, not just today, Jeremy, but all year. Steven, it was an absolute pleasure to meet you, and happy holidays to everyone out there, to you, your family, and enjoy the hobby next year.
Thank you. Take care, Leighton.
Thanks, Leighton. All right. Well, that was fun, and nice to see that we had two different winners. That keeps it nice and clean. Louis, you'll reach out to Leighton, or at least we can chat tomorrow when you're on with me for the PWCC Weekly Hockey Show. That's really, really cool. All right. So, Steve, let's pick up sort of where we left off. And I want to, another thing, you know, when we were, like, I know you, man, but one of the things that we chatted about was grading and how your approach to grading and graded cards has evolved over your history in the hobby, you know, since grading has been a thing. Why don't you speak to that? How has your view of grading evolved over the past, say, 15, 20 years?
So I think back in the 90s, I think grading was pretty rare, and I didn't go to really any card shows or anything else. So knew that it was out there, but didn't really get it. Didn't know the premiums. Pricing was tougher. No internet back then. Evolved to a spot where I think for modern RPAs, you know, it was all Beckett when I started collecting kind of, you know, mid 2000s again. PSA was definitely in the background for hockey, I'll say specifically. And I think for me and grading, I didn't have a great story specifically with one grader. I think I'll leave that one alone for the show. Kind of made me really question about, you know, grades overall. And then I think I definitely saw cards at the Nationals that I was about to go buy, come back next day, you know, half a laugh, was a BGS 9.5, and I know that card would not have graded a 6. It looked like a dog's breakfast. That really turned me off. That was probably, say, 08, 09, like late 2000s. So I had a really bad taste in my mouth from that, hearing some other stories as well too. And then I think on the patch faking and everything else later on, and when I started seeing cards that were slabbed as well too, that was a pretty big turnoff for me, because that's where it's sad. I get you're grading the card itself and not the authenticity and relying on that on the certification of the card, but that was a turnoff for me. But there was definitely a place where I'm gonna say, I don't know if I'm right or not, but coincidentally in timing, and might have been the causation, but when the larger auction houses started pushing grading very, very highly, as in there was a place where they had a lot of returns for raw cards. You know, that someone would say, oh, they didn't see this well enough and things like that, that they would have returns and unfulfilled sales and transactions. I think when you had like the Goldens and PWCCs start pushing that graded cards only, we're not doing raw cards anymore. That was a big, you know, that was a big change in the hobby as well too. And I think that in all the right ways, like that's what grading's supposed to do, is trying to commoditize cards that, you know, hey, this card in this grade will trade between this range narrowly, and then in a lesser grade, in a less range, etc. That made a lot of sense, and it just makes it much easier for the hobby to grasp onto. But I think this is how I look at, even if I take a look at ratings, you know, a number rating for like wines that way, you know, like it's no different from something like that, where this is someone's taste. Or when I love, you know, talk about like Wayne Gretzky rookies that Jeremy certainly is one of the de facto experts on. But when you can make up a PSA 8 that I've seen, I think was one of your copies, and I said that's nicer than a lot of 9s that I've seen as well too. And I'm like, I'm just going to go buy the card. I don't care enough about that grade. Like, you know, for PSA right now, centering for me is actually a huge thing. I care about that very much. And I've seen Jeremy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the PSA is the allowance for like the 60-40 off centered and everything else, that you can still get a gem grade or something like that. But there's some allowances there that I've seen, you know, that, you know, haven't really been great for me to see as well too. It's just not something I agree with. And more, you know, I liked it. And, you know, I remember the first show that I did with you was picking up the BGS 10 Crosby Cup RPA that I have. You held that in your hands in Burbank as well too. And I just told you, take a good look at it, because I think it's just that good. I remembered inspecting that card really heavily before wanting to make a bid on it. And for me, that one was special because after breaking so much 05-06 Cup, it was, you know, those cards were damaged, you know, on average, they wouldn't grade well. Like 9s would be a really great grade, but having something like that on, the best card with also the single color patch that would not have been fake. There's no reason to go fake that. Really made me step up to a card like that. And then now, that's where I kind of get to now that I'm like, I've got a lot of really high grade cards. How much do I really care about those high grade cards versus if they were just, slabbed from factory? And for me, I think grading plays less and less of an interest for me, just ongoing. And especially with the cards that I'm dealing with, which are just modern RPAs with serial numbers, I think that also makes a big difference. So you actually have manufactured scarcity versus grading scarcity, if you will.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I always go back to why grading came about at the beginning, which was, I believe, because we had the advent of the internet, the global economy, and people buying cards sight unseen. So are you going to trust somebody that you don't know to tell you that the card's in mint or excellent or near mint condition? Or do you want that third-party grader's opinion? And let's face it, I mean, cards look nice in slabs. Some slabs, they look nicer than others. I'm obviously partial to the tag slab because it is easily the clearest, but tag only grades back to 1989 for now. I like, when it comes to vintage card, let's talk about vintage cards and grading for a moment, because I think you made the comment to me that grading makes common cards more scarce. And all vintage cards, except for the real short prints like the Honus Wagners of the world, are pretty common. So grading them does give you, like you said it really well, it makes common cards more scarce. It doesn't make the card scarce, it makes the card scarce in better condition. But I got to tell you, Steve, as a collector, and I love my vintage, I really personally prefer nowadays, and this is just how I've evolved as a collector over the last few years, I want my cards from the 1940s and the 1950s, well, the 30s, the 40s, the 20s, I want them to have rounded corners and some toning in the border. I want them to look their age. I don't want them to be perfect. I want them to if they could, to tell a story. You're smiling big. Does that mean what I'm saying is resonating with you? How do you respond to that yourself?
Hugely so, because I'll say in the watch world, like, having patina, where we call the imperfections of a watch, if you have something that's kind of 20s, 30s, 40s, if you have some patina on it, that's just through natural wear, versus if you actually ended up polishing it, you're destroying value by polishing it. You're doing the same thing with cars as well, too. For vintage cars that don't have perfect paint, that's, just accepted, and it's just part of the character of what it is, and also for that time and that usage. But some people want to go respray it all, and you're destroying value by that, although it physically looks better. I have a funny card that I ended up buying, and it was one of the few vintage cards that I have, but it was a 1920 Helvetia Sport Reglo Enzo Ferrari card that I've never actually seen one before. And I think it's an SGC 1 or something like that. And it looks like it went through a lot. And I actually really liked it because exactly that. Like I said, look, I've never seen a copy of this. I couldn't find any real history except an Italian museum. And I saw it for the first time, and I went after it pretty hard. And I said, this looks like what it should look like to me. And actually, I don't want a pristine version of it that way. That actually probably does less for me. So I'm in complete agreement with you. And that's why I was smiling.
All right. Well, no, I like that. We'll talk about modern in a second. Justin Bode says grading is what brought me back. And I get that. I think it's just, even though grading is not a perfect science, the human grading is not a perfect science. And even tag grading, which is automated, is striving towards perfect grading. And I think they're closer than anybody else has ever gotten. But that's not what this episode's about. But I like, it gives you some comfort. Grading, I think, has also driven up the price of cards across the board, and it's made cards more attractive to investors, not just the pure collector, but to investors as well. And then, of course, you got the PSA set registry, which drives a lot of grading activity as well. Brendan Ryan here says, Steve, what evolutions do you see long-term in the grading scale? Is that a question that you're comfortable responding to?
I can try. I think the evolutions for me is it's a little bit sad, because for me, when seeing nothing about PSA as a company, of course, but I really like the Beckett subgrades. That's a big thing for me. Like when I ended up, so a card I acquired this year, which is one of my favorite Kobe cards I have, is a 1996 finest gold refractor that was not numbered. But that card, I have seen so many versions of that card, as rare as it is, but they are the centering. That's a funny one because I care about centering the most, and I've not really seen any that are, well centered except for the one that I have. I think there's 5 copies of BGS 10 ones, and I have one of those. But I appreciated knowing all of those small subgrades, and that's a big thing for me. And if we get to a point where you can even have more subgrades, just the more information, the better it is. Like, wouldn't you want to know that about your card versus here's a PSA 10, but is it the corners that are lacking? Is it the centering? Is it the edges? If you just more information is better. And I think with technology and with better technology, higher resolution in the future, I think you do have opportunities like that could come out.
Colin Murray, yeah, great comments there. Colin Murray makes a really great comment right here. He says, and it's in line with what you were saying, some vintage cards are tough to find centered, generating scarcity, especially in inexpensive cards. That ties in exactly what you were saying, that it makes common cards more scarce, and it introduces this concept of a scoreboard and competition and trying to get and status. Like, high grade cards are a status symbol for a lot of people as well, for better or for worse, for collecting or investing. Either way, they are cards that people are very proud of. When you have the highest, like I just sold a PSA 10 Pop 1 Connor McDavid blue PMG a couple of nights ago, and it went for a lot. It went for good money, a bit more than I was expecting, and it's because of the grading scarcity. But there's so much value that is put towards that in the hobby today, and it comes back to, I think, that ancient bit of wisdom, or just the suggestion that you've heard this in areas outside in every area, not just sports cards, which is buy the best you can afford. And I think that's what this comes down to. And I've always said to that, Steve, is that, well, I can't, so what, can I only afford one card? If my whole budget is $10,000 and I want 10 cards, but one card is 10 grand, do I buy that one for 10 and not get the other 9? Or do I split it up and buy less than I can afford and own more cards? I'm a quantity over, just one nice card kind of collector. I want to just sort of transition, unless you have anything to add to that. What are your thoughts on what I just said? And what about you? Do you collect for profit? Do you collect as an investment? How do you look at, when you spend money on your cards, how do you look at that expenditure?
Yeah, this is probably the most interesting one and probably more controversial one way or another. I mean, I think there's enough people that are in this hobby for investment, which I completely respect. Some people have, make their livelihood out of it from being a vendor, and breakers as well too. For me, I've always looked at this hobby as just, it's just cardboard. There's no intrinsic value in what we're buying here. So it's worth what someone else is willing to go pay for it. But I have to look at this hobby for me as any money that I put into this hobby is money that I'm completely fine just to go wipe off the face of this earth. If my whole collection is worth 0, if I'm good with that, that's where it is. And that's why I guess I can look back at some of the very big swings during COVID and everything else, and getting messages, good messages, bad messages, and everything else in between from what we've seen during the COVID swing. And for me, I just kind of shrug my shoulders, and it's just what the market is, and I accept all of that, and not rightfully to go look at from a point of view as leisure. I think it's fine, but I certainly don't do that with everything in my life. But I look at it as, this is the money that I was willing to go put into the hobby, not taking anything out of it, and I'm just going to keep on recycling it. And if I want to put a little bit more in, then I do. But I don't really expect to go pull anything else out. And if I got bored or whatever else, I do, and I'll get back whatever I get back. If it's 2 cents on the dollar, if it's 4x, whatever else it is, it's going to be whatever it is. But that's how I look at it. Just an expenditure.
That's a nice attitude to have. It's a nice approach to take. I think if it's an approach that is within your ability and your financial position, and I think a lot of people in the last few years have overextended. So they need to, if not getting enough money or not being able to pay off debt to pay off the cards they bought is going to cause them to not pay rent. It's a whole other story. But everyone, that's why I always talk. I've said this a million times on this show, that when you're spending money on cards, if the amount that you are spending is a significant amount to you, you need to consider what's going to happen when you get out of that card eventually. at least have it in mind. Maybe it doesn't guide all your decisions, but I think, if it's the amount of money that could change your life, you need to think about it. You're obviously, and you're not doing that, and I don't either. I think a lot of people don't do that, but I think we had some people that came in during the pandemic, and that is where they went. Random Esports says, I ordered my first tag card off of eBay last week. Very cool, Random. I hope you enjoy the slab. Tom Newman says, what's up, Steve Ho? Brett S says, just picked up a massive PC card, SP Authentic, Cale McCarr, Acetate Young Guns. A very happy Christmas. Congratulations, Brett. Those Acetate Young Guns are beautiful. 86 Collectibles says, I've started to care more about grading on vintage due to what the prior guest said, authenticity. Modern, I care more about numbered cards versus graded cards. I said earlier, we're going to come back to modern. That's exactly how I feel too. When it comes to a modern card, I don't want a card that has a big scratch through it that my eyes can't ignore. I do a little bit of edge chipping, maybe it's off center a little bit. I'm good with. I'm going to buy the card. If I haven't seen one in years, I'm going to buy it no matter what's going on with that thing because I want the card. And that's the hunting and the collecting. What about you, Steve?
Yeah, I agree with that comment a lot because I think I noticed that what I've started gravitating towards are really quite scarce cards where I'll say they're definitely, vintage probably if they're numbered, and if they're, I can't say vintage for that. I'll just say maybe just kind of 90s and before rookie patch autos and kind of early 2000s. I started gravitating towards kind of 50 or less that way. I think for rookie patch autos and things, that's probably as high as I go is 99. But anything else that feels special to me, it's got to be kind of 50, 25 or less. And I care so much more about that. And, cards that I used to think about grades and all that. Or I'll give you an example of a recent pickup card for me. I think maybe a year ago, it probably would have changed my mind and not made me bid on that card. But it was this was a 2003, 2004 exquisite basketball Michael Jordan Noble nameplates, number 1 out of 25, and it graded a BGS 8.5. And I know how my mind works, where I think if it was a year ago, it'd be, it's not a gold label, it's not a 9.5, don't want to touch it. And I would have much rather it just actually be raw and, not be slabbed at that point, even if it was a BGS 9. I had something within me that said it's 9.5 gold label or bust, or it's PSA 10, or I don't want it slabbed at all. And I think I had some cards that I really loved that I just wanted the auto graded, or if it didn't, or the auto didn't grade a 10, or the card wasn't going to get a gem mint, I just wanted it authenticated. So slab, but just authenticated, just for consistency in the collection.
Yeah, I agree with that. That I like consistency as well, although I am willing to have a little bit less consistency nowadays. But I hear what you're saying there. Appreciate the comments. Going to go through a few more here. Mark Santucci says, I would like my cards to have value. I don't think you're alone in that at all, Mark. Brendan Ryan says, I prefer to think of cards as a time capsule of historical nostalgia, and value is secondary, but not important. Yeah, I mean, to me, Steve, I was listening to a podcast today. I think it was The Shallow End, and he was talking about, you guys have to listen to The Shallow End podcast, by the way. And Iowa Dave is the podcaster. And he was talking about, he has 6 questions that he asks before he purchases a card. And one of them was, I believe, if I remember it, it was like, when you look at a card, he was talking about the difference between needing a card and wanting a card. And it was like, he was telling his experience of when he looks at a card, does he really, really get excited? What are the emotions that are stirred up in him when he looks at the card? Is it a card that he's going to want to look at over and over again, or a card that he just wants to know he owns? And I kind of, that resonated with me, Steve, because I think about cards. There are cards that I have been bidding on, and it's 7 or 10 days away, or whatever it is, whether it's on PWCC or eBay. And I am like, for those 7 or 10 days, Steve, it's like it's present in my mind. I'm looking at it over and over again. I'm getting so excited looking at the image of the card. Like this one here did it to me. Looking at this card just gives me a feeling like, oh, I just love it. I just love this card. I know it's just an inanimate piece of cardboard with some threads in it, but we love these things. I'm not going to sit here and explain why psychologically, but we do. Anyway, I loved that thought. And Brendan Ryan talks about the historical nostalgia. And to me, it's not just the historical nostalgia. It's also what's that feeling like when you first look at that card. Steve, have you ever had that feeling in you that you're like, I'm getting this card no matter what it takes, unless Adam Gray is also bidding on it?
I definitely have. I will say, because I own it now, because I own it now, I'll say it. But I think a couple of people probably, we go back to 2005, 2006, the Cup. I have 2 copies of Alexander Ovechkin honorable numbers out of 8. And my copy that I kept, 2 copies that I kept, the one that I kept that I was really happy with, that I really loved, 4 colors with a bright bronze star in the middle there. It's highest graded. It's a auto 10 and PSA 9 top pop. Everything else there is perfect. But the number 8 of 8 finally surfaced, and I swear I must have been looking. I didn't know if that card was ever pulled or whatever else, and I think I saw it at one of the auction houses, and it was I just don't care. Like, I don't care if I have to go sell, if I have to go sell a couple of Ovechkin RPAs that way. I'm not kidding. I would have done it just to go get that card. That'll be the equivalent of like a Kobe Bryant number of pieces from 03-04 Exquisite to give other viewers kind of some context. It didn't matter to me, and I have it now, and I look back on it and I'm like, I would easily pay double that all day long and then not think about it. Whatever it is. I just had to have it when it came out. That was the last one I felt that way. And then for me, the other one was actually that Kobe that I mentioned. I don't know much about, I know enough to be dangerous, but when I first saw that, it's if people are familiar, it's the 1996 finest gold refractor Kobe, which was, the one, it's got the airs on top on the writing, and it's his rookie card. And for me, something about that pose, thinking about, airs at that time when that card was created in 96, I didn't collect back then, but if I look back on it and just saying, hey, if this card came out at that point in time, you're thinking about, hey, are you going to be one of the great ones? And, Expo, we know obviously that he is, in that GOAT conversation, et cetera, and the legacy that he leaves behind. And it just looked like heavenly, like everything about that card was just like, okay, this is the best copy that I've seen by far. There's 5 of them around. That was the other one. I just said, I don't care. And I got a little bit scared because I said, I saw what those comps were back in the crazy days and everything else, but I was probably willing to go pretty close to that comp, and obviously won it for significantly cheaper than that, and was super happy with it. And it's just, everything about that card, I think for me, was just art, because it doesn't it's not serial numbered. It's not, it doesn't have an autograph. It doesn't have a patch. And I didn't know, like, other people can tell me about Topps Chrome, and that's the one to go for value wise. And I'm like, yeah, I look at that card doesn't do it for me. So I get what the market says, but didn't care. This was the one that spoke to me, and that's one I chased and went after.
Diamond Card says, love that card. Random Esports says, comp. Yeah, there's lots of comp talk constantly in the hobby. Okay. Diamond Card Collector here says, do you think it's right to be charged $13,000 to put a card in an authentic holder with a 10 auto? It turned me off a bit, honestly. And I mean, the only thing I'll say to that is, he's talking about PSA who charges based on the value of your card. And, I know a lot of people don't like that. They do it because they have to fund their guarantee that they offer on cards that are, come back as not good in the future or what have you. But the other thing I'll say to that, I'm not here to make excuses for them, but I'll also just say that you have options. They're not the only grading company out there. But if you want to access the benefits of PSA, you have to pay their price. It's really as simple as that. Tip of the mitt, good evening to you. Merry Christmas as well. And good to have you here. Okay, Steve, I want to go on and talk about sort of as the last topic today. And I just see Left Nut in Instagram says, big costing keeps me away from grading with PSA. Well, that's depends on the value of the card you're sending them, really, I think is what that is. You mentioned to me that you have rules or priorities in how you collect, 6 of them. And I found them to be really interesting, and I think people would find them to be interesting. And I share some of these rules. We've talked about a couple already, but you have, I think you gave them to me in order. There are 6 of them. Do you have them handy? And can you just kind of read them off 1 through 6, and then let's go through them in a bit more detail and see if we have any questions from the chat about them. And before you do, I want to just bring up the professor's comment right here. He says, Steve used the word creative. Perhaps some cardboard is actually art, but we are not amplifying this. You know, there is a movement, Professor, and like a narrative, if you will, that has been prevalent in social media now, at least the circles that I'm, the content I'm consuming, that cards are considered to be like our generation's art form. And I agree with that. I mean, I only want to own cards that I love the looks of. I mean, there are some vintage cards that I will own because they're like a Howie Morenz rookie, although it's from 1923, black and white. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles. It's beautiful in its own right, but it's not shiny. I want to own cards that I love to look at, and I do love to look at that one. And I think there is a movement towards cards being considered art. Steve, anything you'd like to add to that discussion before we switch over to your 6 priorities?
Yeah, I actually do like that a lot, because I have a few friends that are pretty high-end art collectors, and when I tell them about these sports cards, and they kind of look at it as not abstract and too much connected to reality and maybe commercialism, I'll stay away from all that. But when I showed them some of the more, explaining them to, for example, I think it was actually on your show that I pulled one of my favorite cards that I owned. That's the 2020 Topps Dynasty F1 Lewis Hamilton autograph flag patch, number 404 for his card number. That was the number 1 card want on my list out of that whole every bit. So yeah, still so one of my favorite things. But when I was explaining the significance of this card to me to a couple of my art friends over at my house over a couple of glasses of wine, they're like, "Oh, you are collecting art? Like, what are you talking about cards?" And that was the first time that I even kind of blended art with cards and all that. And they're just like, "Oh, we get it." And now you're just getting picky about the autograph, and now you're, like all these factors about, the specific foil used. When we talk about, color matching of specific cards to specific serial numbers to everything else, this is the same art critic that, is actually, that's how they look at art. There's a lot of similarities there where, yeah, I honestly believe that's what it is. Like, we're not just passionate about cards in the hobby. Like, this is art to us. Like, whatever it is, it's beautiful, and it's something that's, it's a beautiful creation. That's why that's why all of us are here, and that's why your watchers are watching, and that's why the hobby is as big as it is.
Right, because we want to look at art is meant to be hung on the walls and looked at. Cards are meant to be looked at, even though oftentimes they sit in our closets, bank vaults, wherever. But I know that people often, or we take pictures of them and scans and we look at them that way, but they are meant to be looked at. And then you mentioned all the different sort of criteria or features of a card that comprise art. When it's a memorabilia card, you've got the patches or the piece of stick or the piece of glove or whatever it is. And there's different versions of them because they all come from a different piece of that piece of memorabilia. And then people are always upgrading the looks of a certain card. You're upgrading the piece of art that you're going to be looking at with your own eyes on a regular basis. All right, back now to your priorities. But before we do, we have another comment. I just want to answer this one quickly from Jordan Riker. Steve, do you still have your Lewis Hamilton 2024 flag patch?
I'll go a little bit further than that, Jordan. So I managed to go acquire all of the 404s, which is the Lewis Hamilton card number across that whole dynasty bit. So I own I wish I had it here today, Jeremy, with me, but it's in the bank vault as I'm leaving for vacation soon. But so I have the nameplate 404 from 2020 Dynasty F1. And then I also have the zipper, which Carvin showed last time that he had in San Diego. That is my possession as well. So those 3 are in a bank vault. So yes,
He still has it. He still has it. All right. Your priorities. List them off, please. Read them off to us, and everybody pay attention, because this is interesting. And I'm sure a lot of you share some of these priorities, maybe all of them. Let's see. Steve, over to you.
Sure. I'll take these a little bit more slowly. So the first one for me is really focusing on rookie year auto game used memorabilia, if it exists, for a specific athlete that you're collecting. I think, and if there is no specifically game used memorabilia, then I would just go for auto only. And maybe for an example of that would be anything from Steph Curry, and I think during his year that way. That might be an example there where I've seen National Treasures not be game used on the RPA, and at that point, I'm just very happy just to go have a very nice hard signed auto for me at that point. And then I think if it's for kind of legends and kind of prior to having autographs and patches, if there's anything more limited, and then also I think that's where some grading might start to play in for me. But as we kind of go down the scale, that's kind of how I look at it. But really focusing on rookie year game used memorabilia with auto first, and then auto only, and then something else that makes it scarce, probably serial number at that point if it's before that. And if not, then it would be slab scarcity. Next one for me, a really expensive lesson of no more sticker autos. I'm pretty done with that. But the one I did pick up was because I'll just quick aside was the 2005-2006 Ilya Kovalchuk base auto patch 1 of 1. That's a sticker auto, but I had that card for a good number of years as one of the largest Kovalchuk collectors, and then I got out of the hobby, and that was one I wish I kind of held on to. And I saw it the other day, and I'm just like, just gonna go close my eyes and buy it and tuck it away, and just also just kind of the sticker will bother me forever. But again, there's exceptions to all rules. Second rule: no sticker autos anymore. Third one for me, this one's a tougher one, but photo shoot cards. We go back to 05, 06, 06, 07, the year after inaugural cup. It was all photo shoot. And for me, one of the most beautiful looking cards I had was 06, 07 Evgeny Malkin Cup Foundations auto patch out of 5. And they were all 3 colors, and it was such a gorgeous card. And sure, it's definitely not a giant card or anything else, but it had all the feelings and look and appearance and everything of a ginormous card. But every time I turned around and I looked at it in photo shoot, it never stuck. So yeah, I'm pretty done with photo shoot cards. And even worse, I think, I mentioned to you that was thinking about chasing down a larger basketball rookie from, I think, 2021 National Treasures. And I saw the back of that, and it was, I'm going to get the quote wrong, but it was something to the effect of, attached material is not associated with any event, any game, any player, and everything else. And it was like, whoa, well, this might as well be manufactured at that point. So
what is it, right? Yeah,
exactly. So third rule: no photo shoot, and if there's no good certification, don't want it in the PC. Fourth one for me, this was a more interesting one, was sticking with top brands. There's a lot of really you can get mid-end product, lower-end product, but you can have very rare serial numbers. But for me, I've never ended up keeping any of those. So, the cards that I really do keep in my collection on the modern side is, cup / exquisite, if it's flawless, eminence, something to, prism, but it's got to be really kind of those top mainstream brands for me. I think sticking with those and that notoriety for me was always something that I see more and more of. And I think that's just having strong brands and following strong brands within the hobby. I don't think I've gone wrong with that. So number 4, stick with top brands. Number 5 for me is really not really into the vintage stuff. For me, I'm really I have I think 3 vintage cards of some higher value, but I think unnumbered cards that are just dependent on grading specifically to go drive their value is not interesting to me. Not at this moment with where grading is that way.
I gotta ask you though, because you didn't what you said there was cards whose value is driven by grading are not of interest to you. Does that, but wouldn't you also then, in order to not collect them, have to just not have an interest in those kinds of cards? Like, do you have any interest in a Gordie Howe or a Mickey Mantle or Terry Bradshaw or like any like vintage Dr. J, Wilt Chamberlain? Do you not have interest in those players? Are you more a modern collector, or how do you reconcile that?
It's interesting. I think I'm definitely more of a modern collector because I think for myself, I will say the athletes that I grew up watching, and that's why it's Gretzky for me, was when I was watching his career growing up. I like having that sentiment for me, for cards specifically. I can appreciate all the history from the Hows, the Ors, everyone else before that, but that's more of me reading up on it and treating it as more of a historical item. And I don't have that. I don't have a more active passion, if that makes sense, versus more of a passive appreciation. So I think that's also what drives that as well. I do have a few cards that are certainly vintage, but it's more for I'd say passive appreciation and historical reference at that point.
And I'm all about kind of putting parameters on your collecting. And if someone's parameter is, I am not collecting vintage cards, however you define that, 1989 or before, or 70, whatever it is, I respect that, because you're being disciplined and you're putting some standards across how you're collecting. And so I respect that, but I also think that, and I know that you will make exceptions to that rule. And I think we are allowed to have our own rules, our own priorities, and then make exceptions for them. So they're not necessarily rules as much as they are guidelines. Priorities. I like how you use the word priorities. Okay, so your fifth one was really no vintage unnumbered card. You don't want cards whose value is driven by grading, which is all of the basic flagship product cards nowadays, like Young Guns, like Prism Silvers, like Topps Update. All these things are really, because they're so common, they're making tens of thousands of them. The only way the main way to derive value from them is to have them in a grade, whether it's a 10 from a BGS, a PSA, a tag, an SGC, or it's to find other cards to collect whose value is not driven by grade. And that's what you and I both like. So that was number 5. You want to go on, unless you have a response to that, let's go on to number 6.
Yeah, number 6 for me is an interesting one, because it was actually Leighton that mentioned like Luka rookie. So I think I picked up 3 Luka Panini flawless rookies. The only one that I kept were not the 2 BGS 9.5s one. It was actually the one that was the highest print run. It was number 25 out of 25 vertical. And the only reason I kept it and I paid up for it, because it was not graded and it had the original tape and the seal on it. So it's kind of funny to me when I realize, I'm like, hey, you know what? Maybe I got into it a little bit too much. But the one that I actually wanted to keep for myself was the one that was factory sealed. That meant so much more to me than even the 2 BGS 9.5 copies that I did have. I think I had a Ruby one that was out of 15, and then another, I think a Ruby Stars. Yeah. I'm gonna forget exactly which, but it was from the Flawless product as well. Really great and beautiful, but I just actually didn't want to see the grading label. I actually just wanted it plain seal and plain tape. That was it. So I think for me, the preference of, if I can get a copy of a card that I know comes with a specific factory seal, I want that seal well intact, versus one that's actually graded. That would be my preference.
Yeah. I think that I hear what you're saying. I find it interesting, and maybe I'll evolve into that. But for now, I don't like cards, and there's a reason. I don't say I don't like the cards. I don't love cards that come in the card company's one touch with their sticker keeping it closed. Oftentimes, you know why, Steve? Because when I'm buying that card from somebody, I'm buying it at a card show, and they've had it at a few shows. Maybe they've had it for a few weeks, months, or years, and it's in their 4-row box with other cards, and there's no sleeve over it, so the one touch gets all scratched up, and you're SOL. I mean, what can you do? You have a great card in a scratched up one touch, and you can't take it out because you've got that Panini label or Topps label or Leaf label over the top, and now you're stuck with a card in a one touch that is scratched up. So I find that how do you like, doesn't that bother you when that's the card? Because you're laughing as if you know exactly what I'm talking about.
I do, and I have had 3 cards now over the last over the last couple of months now, that were, I think, a Panini Eminence cards on the basketball side that I really love what's inside. I just could not pull the trigger because of, it's all in OEM tape, but it was all scratched up because I know I would never open it up. So yeah, to your point, it does really bother me, but I think it's really up to us at that point just to go keep things in team bags, right? I don't understand how hard that is for people, but I've also seen people put it, and I'll stay off of this, but I've definitely seen people put in, every card that I transact, I put in a brand new one touch. I mean, look, these things are a couple $, and if the card's worthwhile, then you go do it. But I've definitely bought cards that are well into 5 digits that people are using one touches that I would throw away because they were just in that bad of a condition. But I guess they're doing their job, to each their own.
Well, Brendan Ryan makes a good point. You can use headlight scratch removal cream to buff out those pesky one-touch scratches. And he's right. Scratch X 2.0 is one that I've actually used. And I'm surprised I even didn't think of that as I was speaking to it, because he is definitely right about that. The other thing for me is that I don't have one-touches in my collection. I either have graded slabs or I keep my cards in top loaders with a top loader sleeve over it to keep the top loader clean. And because it's just lighter and I can keep more cards in my boxes that way. That's how I keep them. So those were the 6 priorities. The number 6 was you prefer ungraded cards. Best is the OEM seal, and things like, as you mentioned earlier, flawless, eminence, dynasty lines. So those are your 6 priorities, your 6 guidelines. We had some comments come in about them, so let's go and have a look. First of all, I want to say good evening to you, peeps. Good to see you. Brendan Ryan says, generational perspective, nothing wrong with collecting what you know and love. 100% agree with that. Sean Red says, Steve is collecting what he likes, and that's the way to go. And that includes making exceptions from your guidelines if you need to every so often. Mark Santucci says, there's no wrong way to collect, no wrong cards. Well, okay. The only thing I say to that, to Mark's comment here, is that we often, as hobbyists, acquire cards that we know, that we then realize, I don't want these cards, and I got to go, now I'm going to move them because they don't fit into my collection like I thought they would. And I think that I'm not saying anything that is contrary to what Mark is saying, but what I am saying is, if you're listening to this and you're an amateur collector, put some time into thinking about what you're buying. Maybe, ask questions of people that try to minimize the damage you're going to do to your wallet by making sure that what you're buying is something that you're going to love. And I, as a very experienced collector, this still happens to me every so often. You kind of we can get carried away. And I'm trying to be more disciplined all the time, and even right now. Skeppy says serial number cards and patch or auto cards have their own set of major flaws. I think they're more about issues. In fact, modern cards are subject to significantly more problems than vintage cards driven by grade. I mean, I don't know. I think vintage cards have a set of problems that is really major, i.e. alteration and counterfeiting, whereas modern cards are harder, especially technology cards and, cards that are just not simple cardboard that have holograms on them. I think they have a set of problems, but I don't think they're significantly more. I also don't think they're as significant, but they are serious nonetheless, like the same card coming out with the same serial number, or the wrong patch in the wrong card, or fake patches, or patches that have been swapped out for nicer patches. There is a set of issues there, but that'll be for another discussion. I'm sure we've covered them all on the show over the past close to 4 years. The professor says here that Josh of the Hockey Cards Gong Show and Billy Celio, product manager for Upper Deck the Cup, mentioned in the new release a Gordie Howe insert with memorabilia from a glove. Does this resonate positively? Of course it does. Any game used memorabilia of Gordie Howe in a card is going to resonate very strongly with the hobby. Steve, what do you think?
Absolutely. So I think that's where hockey, I appreciate creativity from product, and whether you like it or not, that's up to you. But it's an option for you to go take a look at, and any hobbyist. So when I remember the first time for hockey, seeing like the Jeremy, you would know far better than I would, but it's there was one that was like almost like you could see the laces of the skate. I remember seeing that the first time, and I think they started using various fight straps to blades of the skate and everything else. Like I think these are all just really cool innovations, and I'm gonna sound cheesy like an upper deck certification, but this is getting us closer to the game, right? So I think I'm all for all of that. Absolutely.
Yeah. If that memorabilia is certified well, and is actually what everybody says and thinks it is, then I'm all for it. I love that kind of card. I am right now reading, like I just got some cards in the mail recently or via courier, and I can tell you that I'm scrutinizing the language on the back of the card almost as much as I'm scrutinizing how much I love the front of the card. It's so important to me, and we're unfortunately sometimes we just don't have many options. You have to take a leap of faith at times, and that's where there are issues that Skeppy mentioned earlier. There are issues with that as well. Do we really know where this memorabilia comes from? No, we can only take the words on the back of the card, and that's why with the verbiage being so vague, it's almost like they don't know what they have half the time. The memorabilia on the front of this card is not associated with any event, game, or I don't know what else they say, player. It's like, so, but it's authentic. So, I mean, my shirt is authentic. Like, my jeans that I'm wearing, they are authentic denim. Like, what does that mean? I'm getting more and more frustrated with that language, and it's causing me to talk about it a lot more, and to, because it's genuine like issue for me. Like, tell us what you have, tell us who's certifying it, and tell us, really what it is, because this game used memorabilia is certified by or is guaranteed by Panini. We see all the time. Well, what player wore that? Like, is it the player on the front of the card, or is it somebody whose game worn jersey sells for $300 versus Luca's who sells for $50K? And I don't know. I'm throwing these numbers out in the air. Who wore it? Like, that's my concern. Who wore the jersey that memorabilia came from?
Exactly.
Brett S says, great insight and discussion. Thank you, Brett. Sean Red, appreciate loving all the hockey talk. Diamond Card Collector, thanks for being here. Merry Christmas. Ed Seat says it was nice when Donruss would put a picture of the jersey the pieces came from on the back of the card. Like, that's ideal. That is unbelievable. That comfort that you get from that is just wonderful, and I would love to see them go back to something like that. All right, Steve. Do you have any cards you have on your desk you want to show us before we wrap up this episode?
Sure. Not too many with me, as I usually don't keep too much with me, but I had a couple of, since on topic and everything else, but I'll show you a couple. I had for myself been a big McLaren fan. I think I've just more recently got into their cars as well too, and just it was for myself, just didn't disliked without actually trying, and then I tasted, loved it, and now big fans of their F1 team. So I think when Topps Dynasty came out, for me, it's always fun. I think you have a bit of this as well too, but when you can pick up a card of the right logo, and then you find another card that is the matching logo, I think that's really cool. So I did that with one of the McLaren principals. So I'll hold these guys up. So side here. So that's kind of the McLaren logo itself with both of them for Seidel there. So these are all out of 10, but yeah, like I like my factory tape there. So these aren't graded, but but it's cool to just go have, the logo itself and go find neat pieces like that. So got a couple of other Dynasty cards, that I kind of kept with me here. So here's
these are Topps Dynasty F1, just for people who are listening on audio later. This next one, let's see this.
So here's a George Russell. That's a 4/4 flag patch.
Beautiful.
That's there. It's also one of my favorite cards because this goes along with the Lewis Hamilton that I pulled on your show. So that 4/4 being Lewis Hamilton's number, and George being the next, hopefully the next up and comer with Lewis. I like that 4/4 connection, so that was important for me to go have that specific one. And then for me. This was a card that I thought about, and I have it because I thought about moving it, and every time I look at it, I really can't. it's for me. I've always been a big Alex Albon fan as well too. But this one I ended up pulling. But this is a gold 1 of 1. It's got the Aston Martin logo on it, and just his autograph, and with that gold and with that Aston Martin logo, like there's too much there that every time I'm like, hey, maybe I don't know where it goes, but I look at it and I'm just happy. So just don't know how else to explain that card.
Hear what he said. I look at it and I'm happy. That's the power of cards. Some cards.
Yeah, and then last one that I do have. You've held the PSA 10 version of this card, and then I found this card, and this is an interesting one for me. I'll hold it up first. So here's always one of my favorite cards is a Crosby RPA here, but this is a PSA 10, PSA 8 with a 10 auto. The autos were tougher as well too, but the grades. This is a Pop 3, the only 3 colored one. There's less than 20 of them that are actually authentically 3 colored when they came out, unlike McDavid, which I think has only 95% of that print run is pretty much 3 colors for his RPA. But it was one card for me that when you focus is not going to be good enough. But if you can see, if you can see the back and how good that cert is, I don't know if you can read that, Jeremy.
We won't be able to read it,
but if maybe I'll just read it out loud. Congratulations, you have received a game-used patch card personally autographed by Sidney Crosby. On the front of this card is an authentic piece of patch from a jersey worn by Sidney Crosby in an official NHL game. Like, that's when you have something like that, that's all I need just to go have a big check mark, and just really happy with that. So
my only issue with that whole thing is the word congratulations. I think instead of it saying congratulations, it should say thank you. It should be them thanking you for spending your hard-earned money on their product versus congratulations. You just spent a lot of money on one of our cards. It's funny. I say that tongue in cheek because we're often congratulating each other for our big pickups, and that is pretty fun. Mark Santucci wants to know, do you have any Patrick Kane in your collection?
I do, and for me, that's my favorite card. I wish I had that one here with me, and I think we found each other. It was Dylan that found me on Instagram, and this was a card that I always wanted. I heard it was around Vancouver and in Canada or something else. I never saw a picture of it, and then I think I acquired it actually a year ago. It was around Christmas time. It was the last transaction I did, and that's the 07-08 Ultimate Rookies. Ultimate Rookie Patch Auto 1 of 1 that had a PSA 10 auto that I got graded on that card, and it's just a stunning. Just if you go to my Instagram, you'll see that card. It's just such a stunning card, and that was that's the one. I don't need another Patrick Kane card because I'm just that happy with that one.
And Steve's Instagram is right under his name, everybody. If you want to follow him on Instagram at Mr.Foch, F-O-S-F-O-C-H. We're going to wrap up right away here, Steve, but very quick. Louis wants to know, and if you can answer quickly, how do you feel about team principal cards from F1 products?
I think they're actually pretty underrated. For the right principles, I think they're pretty underrated. And I used to think that, but I've seen the Total Wolves. I've seen definitely the Christian Horners have really stepped up in their pricing too, where they're kind of mid-pack with all, if you put all of the drivers there, probably mid-pack to, I'd say, higher than the 50 percentile. So I think they're actually getting some respect, but they have some of the coolest patches. So I wouldn't discount them. I think those are good dark horses if you want to go keep something for the longer term and, pick something up at a reasonable price. Cause I think the pricing of $6 cases of 2020 F1 Dynasty is about somewhere between 25 and 30 grand. So, you get six cards in all of that. If you can go pick one up for a few $100s, I think you're doing super, super well. So, yeah.
Sure. Sean Red, a Merry Christmas to you. Mark Santucci, appreciate the 5 out of 5 star ranking on the episode. B. Cox says, I have the Leclerc 404 flag patch. I feel like I'm in good company now. Thanks for sharing all your stories. Great episode. Thank you, B. Cox. Mookie Chilson says, the congratulations on the card bothers me too. Are they doing me a favor? No, I paid for it. Mookie, that's exactly my point. Exactly. I paid my hard-earned money for it. I don't mind being congratulated by my fellow collectors, but for that company to congratulate me, no. Thank me for putting my money into your product. Mookie, we're on the same team on that one. Yankees fan, happy holidays to you. Thank you so much for being here. Louis loves the principal cards. Brett S., yes. Thank you. Congratulations in quotes on a great show. Jeremy and Steve. Thank you, Brett S. Steve, I want to say thank you to you for joining us. We're at the 2-hour mark. This flew by. Really fun show. Great discussion. Thanks for bringing your experiences and your insights and your guidelines to the show. Thank you, Mike Double V. Merry Christmas to you and everybody else out there. Steve, final words to you, and then this episode is over.
Wow. Final words to me feels like a lot. I'd say, even as I think I've known a lot of people that have always looked to me for direction that way. And I laugh at that because I'm not sure. I think I think having those guidelines for me, and the 6 guidelines, and kind of driving the show was important, because really it did take me 20 years to get to where I am, to actually have much more confidence into that versus, and I'll be very happy to admit that, where, when there were cards that were, oh, hey, it's so limited in this grade or whatever else, and I got suckered into it. I went up and I paid for it, and I'm like, did I actually really want that, or is that what the market is telling me? And I think, my best advice to everyone is be true to yourself. As other people mentioned, there's no wrong way to collect unless it's just not being true to what you want and what you value.
Yeah, that's really well said. All right, guys. And with that, well, thank you, Joe Perot. Good to see you. That's it, guys. We are back next Saturday. Brian Gray, former Leaf CEO, will be back. Always exciting shows when Brian is on. I'll be back tomorrow night with special guest co-host Louis, who was in the chat and won one of the giveaways tonight, will be joining me for the weekly PWCC Hockey Auction Ending Watch Party episode. That's it, guys. With that, this episode of Sports Cards Live is